Just a minute.
Imagine a time when the vastness of the universe wasn't defined by trillion-dollar CGI, but by tight-fitting tees and wigs that seemed to defy every law of physics in Star Trek 1966. It was an era where every distant planet bore a striking resemblance to a quarry in California, and where Captain Kirk could take down enemies with punches so slow they became legendary. Have you ever wondered why the captain's shirt always managed to rip at just the right moment? Or how Mr. Spock kept those pointed ears from falling off mid-scene? Behind the solemn atmosphere on the bridge of the Enterprise lay moments of pure chaos fueled by laughter, as well as the unexpected aftermath the cast had to endure once the cameras stopped rolling. Today, join us as we look back at the hilarious and shocking moments when the Star Trek stars broke the script. And before we embark on this journey through time, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel to support us. 20. The historic kiss between Kirk and Uhura. You might still have a deep impression of the kiss between Kirk and Uhura, an iconic moment that led the world to believe it was a pure culmination of emotion. However, behind the lens lay a much more tense reality. In 1968, this was an extremely thorny issue in the United States. In fact, many television stations in the South threatened to pull the episode due to heavy prejudices against interracial romance at the time. It's a pity I was far too young then to fully grasp the historical magnitude of that scene. To protect that humanitarian message, William Shatner and Nichelle Nichols made a bold decision. They intentionally sabotaged every backup take, the ones without the kiss, by crossing their eyes or making goofy faces. Consequently, the network was left with no choice but to let the kiss air. If you look closely, you'll see they appear quite strained. Yet the vibration in the room at that moment was entirely real. The clearest proof is that Star Trek received its largest volume of fan mail in history immediately after that episode was broadcast. 19. The unplanned slap.
I'm ashamed. You've got to hear me.
You likely still remember the dramatic moment from the first season episode, The Naked Time. It was the scene where a strange virus causes the crew to lose all emotional control, forcing Captain Kirk to deliver a fiery slap to help Spock snap back to reality. However, the truth behind the lens was far more intense than what we saw on screen. According to the script, William Shatner was only supposed to perform a simulated slap. But because he was so immersed in his character's explosive emotions, Shatner accidentally swung with full force his palm, making direct heavy contact with Leonard Nimoy's face. The entire set practically froze in shock. The moment the director yelled, "Cut!" Shatner's face turned pale with regret, and he scrambled to apologize to his co-star. In total contrast to Shatner's panic, Nimoy remained incredibly calm. He even joked wittily, "Well, at least now I know what it feels like for an Earthling to get slapped." 18. A real-life savior. You surely still remember the clear, melodious tunes sung by Uhura, which stirred even the heart of someone as logic-driven as Spock. However, behind that brilliance lies a little-known story. Nichelle Nichols once intended to give it all up and hand her resignation directly to the father of Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry. Everything changed thanks to a fateful encounter at an NAACP fundraiser. A fan approached her and declared, "I am your greatest fan." That fan was none other than Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Upon hearing that she planned to leave the show, he offered a powerful piece of advice. You cannot do that. You are not merely playing a role. You are a part of history and are directly changing the world. Those heartfelt words prompted Nichols to return to Roddenberry's office the following Monday morning to withdraw her resignation. When she shared the story with him, Roddenberry was so moved that he couldn't hold back his tears. Her influence didn't stop at the screen. Into the 1970s and 80s, NASA invited Nichelle Nichols to serve as an ambassador to recruit female and African American astronauts. Thanks to the Great Bridge that she built, legendary figures like Sally Ride and Guion Bluford had the opportunity to join the space program, turning science fiction dreams into a living reality. 17. The terrible tragedy of Yeoman Rand.
Just a minute, James. Just a minute.
This is a dark chapter in the history of Star Trek. Do you remember Grace Lee Whitney, who played Yeoman Rand? She was stunning and was promised to become the lead actress of the entire series, but it all collapsed in the cruelest way in August 1966. Right on the set, she was lured into a private room by a production executive. Hearing this, you can probably guess what happened next. Just days after that incident, Whitney was notified that her character was being written off the show. The official reason given was to allow Captain Kirk the freedom to pursue various romantic interests. Remember the episode The Enemy Within, where Kirk is split into good and evil halves? The scene where the evil Kirk attacks Yeoman Rand was a moment where real life mirrored the screen in a painful way. Years later, Gene Roddenberry himself admitted that firing Grace Lee Whitney was the dumbest mistake he ever made in his career. 16. The prop explosion, a horrific on-set tragedy. Do you remember the scene where Captain Kirk fights the Gorn on the desert planet Cestus III? In this scene, Kirk constructs a crude cannon from natural materials to attack the creature. However, in that moment, a prop on set exploded. Tragedy struck William Shatner. Leonard Nimoy and DeForest Kelley, standing nearby, were left with tinnitus. William Shatner was hit the hardest. He described the tinnitus as a cold, sharp, metallic screech that never left him. There were times when the psychological torture was so severe that he admitted to falling into depression. It's like having a siren go off right next to your ear 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the rest of your life, Shatner confessed. Relief only came when he reached out to the American Tinnitus Association. There, he began using a special ear device that emits white noise. This method helped him gradually habituate and find a way to live in peace with the sound until this very day. 15. Scotty's missing finger.
Laddie, don't you think you should rephrase that?
You're right. I should.
Have you ever noticed that Scotty's right hand always seems to be hidden? In reality, actor James Doohan lost his right middle finger during World War II. Throughout years of filming, he constantly tried to conceal this impairment. Despite his efforts, traces of the war accidentally slipped into a few frames, most notably in the episode The Trouble with Tribbles, as Scotty holds a pile of furry tribbles, and in Catspaw during the moment he hands a cup to Captain Kirk. But James Doohan's connection to the skies didn't end there. After his passing in 2005, his ashes were sent into space. A portion of his remains was taken to the International Space Station ISS, while another part was launched into deep space, allowing him to truly trek among the stars forever. 14. Gene Roddenberry's money-making scheme. You surely remember this classic theme song. But behind this melody lies one of the most pragmatic business moves in history. Gene Roddenberry secretly wrote lyrics for the theme song despite never intending to use them in any scene. The sole purpose of the father of Star Trek was to automatically claim 50% of the music royalties alongside composer Alexander Courage. This move left Alexander absolutely furious. He felt his dedicated creative work was being brazenly exploited. As a result, Courage walked away after the first season and swore never to return. His departure left a massive void, as the very melody he created had already become the soul and the eternal heartbeat of a legendary franchise. 13. The Stolen Toast Prank, the funniest behind-the-scenes story. William Shatner frequently teased DeForest Kelley by sneaking his toast out of the toaster every morning, making Kelley question his own memory. At one point, in total frustration, Kelley asked Nimoy, "Leonard, did you see me put the bread in?" With a completely deadpan expression, Nimoy simply replied, "I saw nothing, Day." It took a long time before Kelley finally caught Shatner red-handed, trying to stifle a laugh behind a prop. Instead of getting angry, Kelley just burst out laughing. From then on, whenever his toast vanished, he would just yell, "Bill, across the set!" This prank later became a classic legend at fan conventions. When DeForest Kelley passed away in 1999, Shatner was deeply saddened, remarking that he would always miss those mornings with the missing slices of toast, as they were the pieces that made their enterprise family so full of love. 12. The Secret of the Vulcan Nerve Pinch.
Father of all we now hold true. The image of Serac read in your face what is in your mind, Spock. As I turned and my eyes beheld you, I displayed emotion.
In the original script for the episode, The Enemy Within, Spock was supposed to knock out Captain Kirk's imposter with a blunt strike to the head. However, Leonard Nimoy vehemently objected, arguing, "Spock graduated from the Vulcan Science Academy. He is a scholar, not a street fighter." And so the Vulcan nerve pinch was born from that very resistance. And do you remember the Vulcan salute? That gesture was borrowed by Nimoy from a childhood memory of attending a synagogue. He had once seen the priests perform this unique hand sign to bestow blessings, and he decided to weave it into the film. Additionally, after his passing, astronaut Terry Virts honoured his memory by performing the Vulcan salute from the International Space Station as it flew over Boston. Does the symbol look familiar? Your intuition is right. It is one of the few details from cinema to be officially inducted into the Unicode standard. 11. Captain Kirk's yellow shirt torn at the slightest touch.
My orders are to take you to Troyes, to be married, and to see to it that you learn Troyan customs.
I despise Troyan. Any contact with him makes me feel soiled.
Have you noticed how Captain Kirk's yellow shirt seems incredibly easy to rip during a fight? This was actually a deliberate move by the producers to enhance his rugged look and appeal to female viewers. It became so famous that it spawned the Kirk shirt gets ripped meme. The tears were strategically placed on the shoulder's biceps or slashed across the chest. The goal was nothing more than to subtly showcase William Shatner's physique while still maintaining the poise of a high-ranking officer. In fact, costume designer William Werthice calculated the tear locations with great precision. There was an entire behind-the-scenes team standing by just to rip the shirts so that the damage looked like a natural result of an explosion while still looking good on camera. 10. Lucille Ball, the godmother of the series. Without the support of the Queen of Comedy, Lucille Ball, the Star Trek universe, might have vanished into thin air. She was the Iron Shield, protecting Gene Roddenberry's vision against the skepticism of NBC executives. The funny thing is, when Gene Roddenberry first pitched the idea for Star Trek, Lucille Ball actually didn't understand it at all. She mistakenly thought it was a show about a USO troop touring during World War II. Even after learning it was science fiction, an extremely expensive genre, she decided to bet on it anyway. Furthermore, NBC once demanded that Roddenberry remove the character of Spock because they feared his pointed ears and devilish appearance would frighten audiences, especially in religious states. It was Lucille Ball who stepped in to defend the character. She understood that Spock's uniqueness was the soul of the show. Without her firmness, we would never have had the classic Vulcan icon. 9. Spock has the best smile in the galaxy.
Doctor, I shall be resigning my commission immediately, of course.
This is quite a humorous shock if you're familiar with the stoic philosophy of the Vulcans behind the scenes. Leonard Nimoy was actually a total class clown. Because of this, whenever the crew witnessed Nimoy bursting into laughter, they called it a Spock malfunction moment. William Shatner once wittily remarked, "Leonard has the best smile in the galaxy, but ironically, he spends his whole life hiding it behind those pointed ears." The interesting part is that when Nimoy laughed, his entire face moved so much that his prosthetic Vulcan ears would look out of place. The makeup artist constantly had to remind him to restrain his emotions, as a bright smile could actually peel off the ear glue. Consequently, whenever Nimoy cracked up, he often had to hold his ears with his hands to keep them from flying away. 8. Spock's stolen bicycle.
Maybe, but you can't evaluate a man by logic alone. Besides, he has avoided 2 appointments that I've made for his physical exam without reason.
That's not at all surprising, Doctor. He's probably terrified of your beads and rattles.
Back in the 60s, the Paramount studio lot was absolutely massive. To save time, moving between filming locations, Leonard Nimoy bought himself a bicycle. He adored it so much, he considered it his personal, ground-based starship. One morning, while Nimoy was deeply immersed in Spock's logical dialogue, Shatner sneakily rolled the bike into his private trailer. Knowing Nimoy would come looking for it, Shatner didn't just lock the door. He let his Doberman loose inside to guard it. When Nimoy realized his bike was missing, he headed straight for Shatner's trailer. But every time he reached for the doorknob, boom! The dog's barking sent the Vulcan officer retreating in a panic. After losing his bike multiple times, Nimoy decided to play a winning hand. He hired a security service to watch it. Rumour has it he eventually used a heavy iron chain to lock it to the cooling towers, making it impossible for Shatner to pull the prank again. Remember the menacing tiger in the episode Shore Leave? To push the realism to the limit, the crew brought a real tiger onto the set. Initially fueled by pure adrenaline, William Shatner volunteered to wrestle the beast himself to make Captain Kirk's scene more dramatic. However, all that bravado vanished in an instant when he saw the tiger tear through a large piece of meat with terrifying power. To ensure absolute safety, the production scrapped any plans for direct interaction. The scene of Kirk facing off against the king of the jungle was actually a masterpiece of post-production. They filmed the actor and the tiger separately and then skillfully layered the footage. Shatner later frankly admitted his relief at not following through with that impulsive machismo idea. 6. Spock's bed.
We both have other things to do.
Yes, I have something to do.
This crew is to survive. I have to find an antidote to this space you've locked us into.
In the episode The Tholian Web, audiences got their first break-in to Spock's quarters. Instead of a soft mattress, His resting place was simply a flat, hard bench with absolutely no pillow. This detail is a clear testament to the Vulcan Stoic lifestyle. To them, physical comfort is merely an unnecessary distraction for the intellect. Additionally, if you ever plan on inviting Spock over for dinner, make sure the menu is strictly vegetarian. Vulcans believe that killing to satisfy one's appetite is illogical and uncivilized. This philosophy further deepened the contrast between Spock and his human crewmates on the Enterprise, who were still constantly craving a proper medium-rare steak. 5. The GNDN pipes. Have you ever noticed the letters GNDN appearing on the pipes running along the corridors of the Enterprise during the interior design process? Technicians had to install numerous pipes to create a high-tech look. However, with limited time and budget, they couldn't be bothered to come up with serious names. Thus, an inside joke was born. They stamped GNDN everywhere. The meaning goes nowhere, does nothing. It was a hilariously honest admission that these pipes were 100% fake. When Star Trek became a global phenomenon, hardcore fans spotted this detail. Many serious theories emerged, suggesting it stood for Generalized Nitrogen Distribution Network. It sounds fancy, but the designers stood their ground. Don't fool yourselves, it really doesn't do anything. 4. The origin of the sliding door sound. Now let's explore the sounds of the USS Enterprise. Have you ever thought the doors sounded a bit like paper tearing? You guessed right. Sound technician. Douglas Grindstaff took a piece of stiff paper, shoved it into a sandpaper envelope and pulled it out rapidly in front of a microphone. To give the sound some weight and a mechanical feel, he mixed that paper noise with the hiss of a compressed air hose and the hum of a small electric motor. But why did the crew choose a paper sound instead of a grand metallic one? The reason is that Gene Roddenberry wanted everything on the Enterprise to operate smoothly and subtly, showing that humanity had mastered technology to the point of minimalism. The sound of paper being pulled from an envelope felt pleasant and non-aggressive, perfectly matching the film's spirit of exploration. 3. The mystery behind Spock's ears.
I fail to understand why I should care to induce my mother to purchase falsified patents.
I'm sure when you first watched the show, everyone was struck by the peculiar look of this guy and his famous pointed ears. But few know that attaching those pointed ears to Leonard Nimoy was a literal torture. The specialized spirit gum would start to melt and slide off whenever it met sweat and the intense heat from the high-voltage studio lights. Things got even worse whenever the characters performed vigorous movements like striking a monster or leaning over to check a console. At those moments, the crude zippers on the backs of their shirts were often clearly visible. Furthermore, under the bright lights, you could see the outlines of undershirts or hurried stitches made on the spot to resize costumes just in time for air. And did you notice the boots? These were just standard 60s footwear covered in a layer of spray paint or adorned with a few plastic bits to look high-tech. 2. What was the alien menu made of?
Hopefully, I can change that attitude.
Do you remember those strange dishes in the show? You probably once wished you could sit at a table on the ship yourself. In reality, the secret to creating delicacies from distant planets was often just multicolored gelatin or tropical fruits carved in visually puzzling ways to look as little like Earth food as possible. To add to the exotic flair, the alien menu certainly couldn't go without bubbling or steaming flasks, thanks to the heavy lifting of dry ice. Deep blue cocktails were often favoured by writers and given bizarre names like Romulan Ale or Nectar of the Orion Gods. Talk about the art of visual deception. 1. The middle initial mismatch. In the episode Where No Man Has Gone Before, Kirk's headstone surprisingly bears the name James R. Kirk. Doesn't that seem odd? Why an R instead of a T? Later on, the filmmakers had to adjust it to James T. Kirk, short for Tiberius, and brushed it off as a mere computer technical error within the show. However, it wasn't until the Star Trek animated series 1973 that the middle name Tiberius, inspired by a powerful Roman emperor, was officially confirmed by writer David Gerrold, finalizing the immortal name of James T. Kirk in the hearts of fans. In the end, what gives Star Trek 1966 its enduring vitality isn't just the timeless sci-fi adventures, but the very human heartbeats behind the lens. It was the silent sacrifice of William Shatner's hearing, Leonard Nimoy's rare smiles hidden behind pointed ears, and the mischievous pranks with slices of toast every morning. It was those script-breaking moments that turned a cast of strangers into a bonded family. Which of these anecdotes impressed you the most? Leave a comment below so we can reminisce about this legendary crew together